Why didn't they put the 80s up all of them? 4 80s. What?
We gotta wait for that to come on.
What, we're going to go 2 more in there?
There's an option for 2 more. Ready to go?
Oh, they're going to watch.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Northampton County Council meeting of January 5th, 2017 to order. Please rise for a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Ms. Zembo, can we call the roll?
Mr. Bennell? Mr. Kuzic?
Present.
Mr. Dees?
Here.
Mrs. Ferraro? Peg?
I'm here.
Mr. Geisinger?
Present.
Mr. Kraft?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Vaughn?
Here.
And Mr. Warner?
Here.
All are present except Matt Bennell.
We have 8 present and 1 absent. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the December 15th, 2016 meeting. We have a motion by Mr. Dietz to approve by acclamation. Do we have a second? Seconded by Mr. Werner. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Passes by a vote of 8-0 unanimously. Next item is courtesy of the floor. I have 1 person signed in, Don Moore from Plainfield Township.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Council. Thank you. I think it was Einstein that said that doing the same thing over and over is insanity.
Definition of insanity.
Definition of insanity. I am back here to speak about Farmland Preservation, give you an update. We have a problem, and the problem is that, well, looking back, I think it was July, there was a meeting, one of the council meetings, Renew Lehigh Valley came in, asked for $1 million. Mr. Brown announced, I believe, at that meeting that he was planning to budget $0 because of lack of demand. He mentioned there was a stipend, which there is from the state, it's about $700,000, and he felt that they could cover their needs with that. Within 2 months, Mr. Brown, at an audit review at the Open Space Committee meeting, I believe, here, Maria appeared and asked for, I think it was about $800,000, give or take, and Mr. Brown announced suddenly that all of a sudden he's going to budget $500,000. He was planning to, which is what he did, as you're aware. For some reason, he didn't use any of the $3.9 million levy that Mr. Stofa put in for open space. He went to directly to table games in his budget, which I thought was unusual. You had done that previously in an amendment in a previous year. Now, then on November 30th, evidently Maria was still asking for money, and the council members were looking for a way to get, we hear, $250,000, and there was an amendment. And on November 30th, plus or minus a day, that failed, Mr. Werner's amendment. And my understanding is that for lack of support, which included Ms. Ferraro and Mr. Geisinger, who usually, they're from EIT townships. I may have my facts slightly wrong. The amendment did fail on who supported it, who didn't. The point is there wasn't support. Now, I've preached to you about this before. I need you to understand that when Mr. Brown failed to meet Maria's request of $300,000, that translates into about $1.2 million lost to the program. How does that happen? $300,000 put in by the county. It all starts with the county, which I know there's some resistance on, but that's the way the program works. It doesn't work any other way. That allows townships to put in $300,000 more. Those two things are combined and go on to move forward to the state. And at the level we're working at, we know from experience you get about $1 per dollar back. That'd be $600,000 back. So that alone costs about $1.2 million. The failure of your amendment, you need to understand, the failure of that amendment of $250,000, if you just paid attention to what I said, what does that translate into? Anybody in the room? A loss of approximately $1 million. It's a 300% return. I've talked about a 100% return. That 100% return is from the perspective of the county. From the perspective of Maria, who needs to preserve farms, it's a 300% return. The county doesn't put $1 in. The townships can't put $1 in. We're limited by what the county puts in. Now, here's the problem. In November, when Maria was still hoping to get $250,000, she came to the townships verbally, talked to one person in each township and said, I'm guaranteeing you a 25% return of whatever the state gives on your EIT townships that have taken the pain to put an EIT in. Instead of giving you what you've always got, which is a 100% return from the state match, I'm going to give you 25%. On December 2nd, 2 days after the amendment failed, that changed to a letter that went to the townships that said, can't guarantee anything. And verbally on the phone, she said it's going to be between 0 and 25% and agreed that it could very well be 0. And you can see why. The $250,000 amendment that failed cost her approximately $1 million out of her budget. The townships were only going to be able to put in $500,000 now. She can't make up the $1 million loss. She has no way. The best she can do is maybe $500,000 at this point. Do you think that she's going to give those EIT townships $1 of their match? We don't think so. And she agreed it could be 0. Now here's the problem. The townships she's asked to contribute are Moore, Upper Mount Bethel, and Plainfield, my township. Plainfield and Upper Mount Bethel, both the open space boards and /EAC and their councils have voted unanimously with one person exception not to agree to Maria's terms. I need to tell you that in November and December, Plainfield Township wrote back and said, we support the program, and the other townships support the program, but we said we want a 100% match.
Okay, about a minute or so?
Yep, thank you. Well, Upper Mount Bethel did the same thing, and we've said that in writing. There's only one township left, Moore Township. Tomorrow, they meet, 3:30, and on the same proposal. What I'd like you to do is it's probably the executive's job or authority to call Maria and suggest that she give us a 100% return our match. This program's about to die. 2 nights ago at the county preservation board, it was discussed that this program, they may not want to go forward with it because the office is overworked. So on the one hand, Maria wants to take down every single farm and take our matching to do it and fund non-EIT townships and subsidize them, which we do object to most strenuously. But on the other hand, now we're hearing, well, there may not be enough manpower in our office. And I told you before that Mr. Brown left that position of assistant to Maria open from January to November of last year. I know I'm over time. But now, that's one reason the office is overworked. It takes 2 years to work these things through the system. You can't zero the budget out every year like I know an accountant would like to do. The other thing I'd like you to do, I'm sorry, the one thing was I'd like you to ask Maria. The other thing was I'd like a meeting with open space members. Maria's been asked about this already. Maria, her board, open space members, and the township representatives. So we need to work this out because this program is about to die.
Okay, thank you. All right, that was the only person I had signed up. Is there anyone else that would like to address council this evening? Okay. There being none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the controller's report. Mr. Barron, I thought I saw it. Would you like nothing this evening? Then the next item would be the county executive's report, and Mr. Brown has asked to update council with regards to the P3 bridge program, and I'll call on him right now.
Good evening, council, and Happy New Year to you. By way of introduction, GPA, who is acting as our agent, if you would, for the P3 project, the General Purpose Authority has entered into 3 different agreements. One with Northampton County as a service agreement to handle the 33 bridges, an agreement with the third-party engineering agreement who represent the technical aspects, and they've entered an agreement with the Alfred T. Benish company to do that. And then finally, the actual contractor that will do the bridge work, and that is the Krieger Construction Company. Third-party engineer, we have this evening George Horace, Senior Vice President from Alfred T. Benish. That contract, for your information, is a $480,000 a year contract for a 5-year term. The Krieger Construction Company is represented by James Marcelino, who's Vice President, and his counsel, Jim Kutz from McNeeds Wallace. That contract bid was $31,500,000 and basically was to start October of 2016 and a 14-year term, 4-year construction term, plus a 10-year maintenance term, just to bring you up to speed. As you're more than aware, we had litigation issues that were raised in September and October of this year. I'm going to call on John Lucius who serves as the solicitor for the General Purpose Authority to update council on that information.
Very good.
Good evening, council members.
Welcome.
And John Lucius, Jr., Solicitor to the Authority. Happy New Year. I think the last time I was before you may have been at your first meeting in October, at which time there was litigation that had been filed by Northampton County Bridge Partners, which is one of the parties that submitted a proposal to the GPA's RFP for the project. And there was a second litigation proceeding that had been brought by a resident of the county, Kevin Lott. What has transpired since early October, on September 29th, and we may have reported this, Judge Daly ruled in favor of the county and the GPA in connection with the lawsuit that was brought by Northampton County Bridge Partners, basically ruling that Bridge Partners did not have standing to bring a lawsuit under the P3 statute, commonly referred to as Act 88. Bridge Partners has appealed that unfavorable ruling from its perspective to the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, which is where it sits. Bridge Partners has not asked for an expedited hearing on the matter, and we expect that the court probably will not render a decision until midsummer or even later. The litigation brought by Kevin Lott was in early October and was subsequently, and perhaps a bit unexpectedly from the GPA's perspective, withdrawn in the middle of November, actually November 18th to be exact, and it has not resurfaced. The reason why I give you that background on the litigation is because, unfortunately, those two litigation proceedings, and particularly the Bridge Partner litigation proceeding, have had a fairly significant adverse effect on the P3 project from two key perspectives: cost and timing. And as John Brown indicated, we have George Horace from Benish here, who is, which has been retained by the GPA as the third-party engineer to provide contract oversight and administration. And I'm going to ask George to explain from his perspective as Senior VP of Benish, and based on his many years of experience, George is also a professional engineer, just more specifically how the litigation precipitated delays that resulted in the increase in costs and the shifting of the project schedule. George.
Good evening, council members, and I too wish you a happy new year.
Thank you.
As Mr. Lucius has indicated, the litigation has caused the project to experience both a time and a cost delay. As you know, the project consists of two major phases. It consists of a design phase and a construction phase. Delay, by definition, includes a time component, so there's not a lot of discussion in terms of defining a delay. But in addition to that, the cost associated with the delay to both of these elements is certainly something we want to talk in a little bit more detail about. The design cost actually increases because there's an escalation in engineering labor costs. With more time, generally engineering firms escalate labor prices January 1st of 2017, of which we've just experienced. So the escalation of labor contributes to that. There are also investigations that are of basically a time of year sensitivity that have to be performed for mainly permitting reasons, but certainly the overall design process. An example of this would be wetland and bog turtle investigations. Now, while those could be performed in winter months and spring months, the more favorable time of year for more definitive results and less questions from regulatory agencies typically is generally in the May to August timeframe. So for permitting reasons, those investigations ideally have been delayed a bit and have contributed. It follows that if the design is impacted from a delay perspective, then construction will be. Design has to be complete, of course, and permits acquired before that phase starts. Labor and material costs are escalated, just like labor for engineering costs. There also very well may be some seasonal limitations that creep into the construction process. For instance, cold weather concreting. If concrete was to be placed in a more reasonable time of year, there aren't some additional measures that have to be taken for the protection of that. Colder weather, there are certain the potential for additional costs associated with that. So all told, there is construction, both design delays and construction delays, as well as cost implications for both of those components. Thank you.
Okay.
So based on So the GPA has basically informed us that the impact, the time impact where the project was supposed to be started in going into the third, fourth quarter of 2016, in sitting with Krieger, essentially we're shifting the entire contract for a year ostensibly. So the revised timeline will be construction to commence on or before January 1st of 2018. What that means is Krieger will start laying out their planning in the first quarter of 17 and start doing the design work and those types of things that would normally have taken place by now. Overall, the increase, we've been informed that the cost of construction over the entire cost of the project will increase by $1.5 million, taking the $31.5 million up to $33 million for a total cost project. The way that would essentially be paid out, it'd be paid out over 12 years, increasing the county's annual payment of $125,000 per year over the 12-year period that we'd be paying out against the contract overall. So in 2017, the council approved in the budget $3.5 million as a capital project for this. That would have to be adjusted up by $125,000, probably by budget amendment sometime during the course of 2017 going forward. The service agreement that we have with the GPA has with the county allows for, there is a provision in there for extraordinary events and delays that are not really in the control of either the county or the GPA or the engineering nor the construction company itself to make requests for these additional costs. So essentially the agreements are in alignment with the request. As you heard from George Horace and the Benish Company, they are appropriate. So that was one of the things we wanted to make sure that over the life of the request that was being made by Krieger would be an appropriate adjustment to the original contract that they had bid.
Any Mr. Kraft, you have a question?
Yeah, John, we didn't approve this till, what was it, September or October?
October.
October. So the argument that you couldn't see bog turtles and do that kind of due diligence because it has to be done in May, June, and July, or June, July, and August, or whenever he said, it doesn't really, play weight. The other thing is it's a 5% increase. We haven't even started. We have a 5% increase. 1.531, just 1.5 mil is 5%. I know he said it was because he increased everybody's salary in the firm by 5% or something, but when I do contracting, and it's a multi-year contract, like say we do a huge school, like up at Northside, it was a mile long, and it's a 3-4 year job, we factor that in when we bid the job. We know that the increases are going to be every year. And I'm sure a good engineering firm knows what their increases are, too. Are we going to see a 5% increase every year?
Again, this, Mr. Graff, this impact was resulting from litigation that was brought forth. When we're not, we've been missing the quarter in which some work could have been done, that while it looks like it's a short window of time in terms of the construction cycle, it has a significant impact by basically extending the entire contract an additional year in time from when Krieger would have made the original proposal back in July of 2016. So.
Yeah, but we didn't get to it till, August or September anyway, so all this engineering and everything would have been, this would have been the time frame you'd be doing all that.
They would have
I mean, we
started,
went
they
off
would
by
have,
2 months.
the intent would have been for Krieger to have started this process in October and been able to achieve some of this work ahead of time, but because that was not able to take place, because the litigation ran interference with our ability to finalize things, you're not offsetting 3 months, you're offsetting an entire year, essentially.
Well, you have to understand, from my perspective, this is one of the reasons why I voted no, because of the way the contract was written with all the little caveats in there of how you can get increases and, you don't see things, you can ask the council for more money. I still stand here and say this is going to cost us a heck of a lot more money by the time this is finished.
Fundamentally, I understand council's concern on that matter. It's my concern also. But even with this additional increase, I still believe it's a good value for the county on a per bridge basis. There's a slight impact, and relative to the other bids that were proposed, it's still tens of millions of dollars less overall. We engaged the GPA, engaged the Benish Company for this very reason, that we have a third-party independent arbitrator, if you would, to guide us in the technical evaluation of these types of issues that they occur. Will there be other issues in a complex scope of work that we're handling right now? There's probably going to be some other issues with that. I won't be naive. I'd love to come back and say everything's done in 4 years and great, but that's not reality overall. So
The Benish contract, that's $480,000 every year for 5 years?
per year, yeah.
Okay.
No,
$480 for the 5 years. Okay.
For 5
Yeah,
years, sorry.
I didn't hear it
Sorry.
properly, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure. Okay.
sorry,
Plus,
my apologies.
plus the additional 5% for their labor costs because they went up. Okay. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Any others of Mr. Phillips and then Mr. Werner?
John, so if we were able to start this in July, then we would have finished it in 2017 and we wouldn't incur the additional labor, that 5%?
No, I mean, essentially what's happening is because there's, and George, you might be able to explain it a little more specifically, there's certain windows that are time sensitive to hit. And if you miss those critical windows, you create long, significant delays in being able to come back to that time cycle again. And that's what we missed in that October, November time frame, if you would. Those 2 months became very costly to us.
Right, but so I'll ask you again. Was the contract let with the idea that we would have started in July?
No, that we would have been, well, originally when we put the RFP out, we were looking for a June, July, probably to have this up and running. During the RFP process, we received a number of requests to extend the RFP window. It was originally 30 days. I believe we went out, I think 60 days in total at the request of the bidders. They needed more time to do that. There's some other time issues. So basically, we didn't receive all the bids in. I think, Stan, I forget when we received all the bids. But we were just going through the evaluation then in July and August. And that took a little bit longer to vet out also. So we were expecting at that point to be able to hit the ground October 1st, the end of September, was the revised timeline from the GPA county's perspective.
So it sounds like that the legal maneuvering that we went through didn't hold us up. Is that true?
Well, it did, because Krieger and their engineers would have been on the ground in October. So October, November, and depending on the weather in December, they would have been able to do a certain amount of their engineering work that they're not able to.
Mhm.
And that then delays us to a significant time window. With interest rates being what they are, cost of materials, interest rates just went up, which we were concerned about. Obviously, while we were driving to get the project up and running, they all factor into the overall cost of the project moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this thing has the potential to save so much money. This isn't a significant amount, but, as an Arkansas senator once says, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, sooner or later you're talking about big money. And that's how, I understand what Ken's talking about, $1 million here, $1 million there. We could eat out the benefit that this had. So I'm just
Well, and I
cautious.
share council's concern with that. And again, I'll reiterate, if you go through the agreements that we have with the GPA and with GPA is created with both Benish and then also with Krieger Construction, there are a number of caveats in there to prevent, we'll say, cost creep, which is Mr. Kraft's concern, which he expressed even before the project was approved. None of us anticipated litigation being one of the major delays that could have impacted the project right from the beginning, which is why we wanted to bring it before council as quickly as possible once the details were worked through. The contracts do have, again, quite copious checks and balances to make sure any other costs that may come in from the construction side are vetted and approved by a third party. And I believe there's some arbitration language in there also if we don't agree with that to protect the county and the taxpayers also. So again, it's unfortunate that we're going through this. However, I still stand by the value of the contract as it is right now.
Mr. Warner, you had a...
Just one thing. We had in the service contract, there was a paragraph regarding litigation. And if I thought I heard Mr. Lucius say that there was an appeal to the Commonwealth. And my question, I guess, would be, are we still in conflict with that?
No, that was taken, the conflicts that would have existed, I believe it was paragraph 17.
I don't remember.
I forget, but that was done in conjunction with the council solicitor, the county solicitor, in order to mitigate any conflict with that in the service agreement. So no, that did not stand in the way.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Mr. Vaughn and then Mr. Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The gentleman that came up and I think he's the engineer and lawyer, George,
engineering, and George Horace?
Yes.
George.
Yeah.
He's an engineer.
Okay. He talked about time, and we missed some time and we missed some windows for certain engineering processes. I'm not an engineer, so I don't completely 100% understand all this. I work in healthcare, so is there any way that we could possibly, and I'm also a visual learner, is there any way that we could possibly get some sort of breakdown of these windows that we missed or time frames that we've missed for certain things that we didn't do because of this litigation so that we understand the whole process? Because all I hear is times and windows and bog turtles, and I don't actually understand exactly what we actually missed.
Yeah, and there seems to be an incredible focus on just that one element, but I think we also have to take a look at the element that's on the back end, which is the construction side. And what I'll say is if someone could tell me what rebar is going to cost 3 years from now per pound, they're probably in the wrong business. And that's part of the package as well. So a 5% increase is actually still even from a global perspective, 3 years from now, that may or may not be an accurate number. So we're focusing quite a bit on just bog turtles and wetlands, and that's only one part of the component of both the time and cost. However, I mean, I could step you through the engineering process, the permitting process, and what's generally done.
No, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to belabor the point in front of the council either. That's why I asked if we could get some sort of written breakdown of what we missed. And
yeah, sure. So just so that I understand the request, Is it a work plan and a flow chart of design activities leading up to
Yes.
construction? Okay.
Yes. I
Yeah.
think that would be excellent, to give us some more clarity, because I think some of us are a little bit,
Yeah, with maybe those seasonal
Sure.
restraints
Yeah.
superimposed on top of it. Yeah, I mean, that's not a real difficult product to prepare.
thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Mr. Lauer?
I just wanted to ask John, I don't remember anything about the details of this appeal, but are we involved in an appeal where the appellant could be required to post a bond or something like that?
Phil, here's the lay of the land at the moment. Is this thing, Ryan, please.
Go ahead.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I can answer up to a point.
All right.
The lawsuit that was filed by Bridge Partners on September 29th sought injunctive relief as the remedy. In a way, yes. I just want to take a side for a minute because of some of the comments made here. This litigation has had a very significant impact. And it's not just the litigation, the filing of it itself, but it's been the actions that have occurred behind the scenes by certain people involved in it that have made our jobs here collectively much more difficult. And I'll stop there, but it has been dishonorable and it's been distasteful. And I state that for the record. Phil, I'm sorry, Judge Dowley, I was going to say the trial court judge, basically dismissed the case on the basis of standing. He did state in his decision, however, that the plaintiffs do not meet all of the elements necessary for an injunction. So we never got there. And the appeal that was made is based on only one issue, the standing issue, nothing else. Beyond that, Ryan, I won't say anything more unless you want to go into executive session with county solicitor.
Well, no, just for counsel's benefit, what I was inquiring about is certain types of appeals. The appellant can be required to post a bond to cover everybody else's losses while the appeal is pending. And I don't know that much about the appeal, so.
Interestingly, Phil, the appeal is not based on injunctive relief.
Okay.
And maybe part of the reason for that is because of what you just said.
Yeah.
Inquiry what the amount of the bond would be in the context of a $31+ million project.
Okay, gotcha.
And just as a side comment, the appeal was, the brief that was filed by the plaintiffs was filed basically at the stroke of midnight.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Just don't go anywhere.
Mr. Kraft and then Mr. Dietz.
It was September or October where mostly unanimously, except for me, the body voted to take that paragraph out of the contract, that if there was any litigation, the bridges couldn't be transferred. They voted to take it out, and then they voted to give the bridges to the GPA. So if that's being out of the contract and all, why wasn't it started to move forward with the due diligence or any kind of engineering? I mean, it's been a very mild winter.
Mr. Kraft, the contract was not signed.
Which contract was not signed?
The PPA. None of the documents of it were signed in September. When the final vetting. Okay.
Mr. Kraft, the reference to the agreement that you just referred to is the service agreement, which is the agreement between the County of Northampton
And the
General
GPA.
Purpose Authority.
Right.
There's still a secondary agreement between the General Purpose Authority and Krieger Construction.
Has that
can
been
yet
signed?
that needed to be completed.
So you still don't have the thing between Kruger and you guys signed, so the bridges aren't going anywhere. You just have an engineer on staff.
None of the documents have been signed because of the litigation.
But we took that out of the, I'm sorry, not we. I'm saying we collectively because we voted that way and then now it's us. But we took that paragraph out that you could transfer the bridges, we could give them to you, and you could do what you had to do
Yes.
in October or September, whenever that vote was.
Respectfully, the litigation prevented us from going forward because we had to go back and extensively renegotiate documents that were about to be executed because of this litigation, which, perhaps not coincidentally, was filed shortly after Krieger was finally selected by the selection committee, and we were about to go to finalization and execution of the documents.
Right, so nothing's going to move forward until this litigation's over?
Not
Is that
correct.
what you're saying?
Not at all.
So we're going to have engineering paid for, but we won't have a contractor to do the bridges until we can get to that point.
Our objective, after going through all the rigmarole, is we will have all the documents signed next week.
Okay?
And we didn't want to do that until we came back here and had Mr. Brown and others fully inform this council of why there was this delay in cost increase.
Of the
It's all about the
5%.
litigation.
Okay. Because, yeah, I thought most of these bridges were box culvert and
They
thing.
are.
And that doesn't mean there's a lot of, rebar, and there's a lot of approach and egress, to the bridge, and a lot of different engineering for bridges that have to be built with actual structural members and all. It's a little different putting in a bunch of box culverts. I understand you got to look for bog turtles and everything that we get caught up with, but the bridges that we're talking about here aren't very complicated to build.
Mr. Kraft, respectfully, I am an engineer,
Right, I know.
undergraduate.
I know you are.
Okay, I know, you checked me out, I know that.
Yeah.
Okay, quite erroneously, in fact. Okay? What you're saying is not accurate.
Okay.
It is, the litigation is the primary reason why we couldn't sign the contracts, could not do the due diligence, and could not move the project forward. It's that simple.
Okay, but there's still litigation, but you're going to sign the contract next week.
That's right.
Okay.
Because the lot litigation has been withdrawn, and there is only a pending appeal, which only consists of a standing issue, which Judge Daly blew out of the water at the trial court level, and we feel highly confident that the Commonwealth Court is going to uphold the
Right.
Honorable Judge Daly.
And the lot thing was withdrawn 2 months ago or something?
On November 18th.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dietz, you had a
Well, I guess part of it was answered there. I just had some questions on when Krieger actually won the bid, and then when did Krieger win the bid for the bridge project?
I forget when we actually awarded, sometime in September.
September 29th.
So,
Particular dates.
yeah, so the middle of September, it was only a week later we had the lawsuit, and a week later we
No,
basically...
The process from we went through an entire selection committee process, a vetting process, and that moved through the month of August. Krieger was selected. There were additional questions, so from August into September, we were moving forward with Krieger when we formally send them an announcement, yeah.
So in the bid request from them, when did they plan on starting? Was it...
October. The end of the county had set a time frame. The county and the GPA had set a time frame that we needed this done and moving by September 30th, and that's what they were working off the premise from. So we set the original time expectation.
Yeah, so I was saying, so when they bid on it, they knew, or they were planning on end of September.
Correct.
To build the...
Everything was based off of that interval, and we took more time. The review committee took more time than anticipated originally to vet it, so it took a little bit longer for us even to get them on board.
All right, and I guess, so, I do realize the seasons go and how it compounds things, but they wouldn't have been ready till, end of fall, so the whole summer projects of stuff they're talking about would not have happened in 2016 anyway.
No, the original, again, I'm not an engineer, so I don't want to oversimplify this. There's engineering work that could have been done. The original scheduling that Krieger had put together had to be completely rearranged because of the loss of the timeframe in the fall of 2016. So they have to go back and realign their time schedule. They have to now go ahead and take a look at the engineering that didn't get done. They have subcontractors and other people they work with that they also have to obligate to. So the litigation had a ripple effect far beyond just a singular agreement that had to take into account. We would be asking Krieger Construction to take on a project while the litigation was pending. Now that has cleared, other than the appeal,
But that was also
all parties involved feel the appeal is not a significant liability, if you would, going down.
But wasn't that the case when we voted on it in October, that we already had Dalley's answer, and we were basically told, because of the time frame, we needed to vote on it and not drag out.
We were moving with the anticipation, and then again, with the lot, a second litigation coming in, through, again, a second monkey wrench into the equation. So all parties involved were trying to move this forward in an expedited way, and we just missed the critical windows that were involved. It really is that simple overall. The other option would have been to trash the whole thing and start all over again with a new RFP. And so I will start from scratch, and now we're talking about the middle of 2018 before we'd be up and running. Again, we take several months to bid it out. The selection process going into the fall, we'd be right back where we were. So the cost increase, while I don't find it palatable, is, again, I think in the best interest of the taxpayers of Northampton County to get these bridges moving forward. And I do stand by the GPA selection of both Alfred T. Benich and also the Krieger Company as being the right entities to take this on our behalf. I'll also remind Council that this is a novelty for counties. We're not following anybody else's template. We're blazing new ground here, so some of these traps, if you would, is nothing we would have anticipated going forward. So there's some of that built into it also.
Anything else then?
Mr. President, would it be possible to take a few minutes just to I'd like to get a look at that paragraph again that talked about the appeals, if that would be okay. I don't have it in front of me.
Why don't we have our clerk get a copy right now? I would rather not, but I think we can get it to you after the meeting.
That's fine.
We can pull it up.
That's fine. My concern is, and I'm not convinced, because I know we had such a heavy discussion about that paragraph that led us down the wrong path, that we were totally convinced it was going to be okay, and now we're finding out that there were delays and there's an appeal, and I'm not sure what the impact is of the appeal that is going to be at the Commonwealth level, and I think that we have to know what that's going to do based on the fact we're losing.
The appeal is, again, it's a measure of liability in all parties involved. So far, the Krieger and the GPA and our solicitor, the county solicitor, took a look at the impact of the potential of that appeal, and while we can't forecast what that is, we feel it's minimal to, at that point, of affecting the project. The timing of it, excuse me, the timing of the litigation in September was far more impactful. The lot litigation being taken off the table neutralized that. The adjustments to the paragraph that you're referring to, Mr. Warner, were again in the service agreement between the county and the GPA. There's still secondary agreements between the GPA and Krieger and GPA and Alfred T. Benich. And really the impact was the concerns raised by Krieger Construction and their counsel as to the potential impact if there are certain things we could not account for, and then time and being one of the more critical ones that we, in their impact, to be able to move forward to meet the original timeline that they had projected to be able to meet based on the cost of the project. So the information, Mr. Warner, will get to you to your satisfaction. I'm sure you'll be satisfied with that. As far as the impact of the potential appeal, I'll defer to Mr. Lauer and your counsel to comment and provide insight with that, along with Mr. Ryan Durkin, if that's appropriate.
That's fine.
To your satisfaction.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's disappointing, but we'll look forward to your proposed budget amendment later this year.
Okay. Thank you, Council.
All right, so that was the county executive's report. Next item is old business. We had nothing on the agenda this evening. Is there any old business that anyone would like to bring up at this time? Okay, there being none, we will move into the new business portion of the agenda. First item is the consideration of the intergovernmental transfer agreement resolution. And at this time, I'll call on Mr. Phillips to introduce the resolution because he's been involved with the conference call as part of the process.
Yeah, I was involved with 2 conference calls this year, probably 3 last year. This is very much setting going on the format that we had last year. So I'm going to read the now therefore. Now therefore to be resolved that Northampton County Council hereby consents to providing the intergovernmental transfer program an estimate $10,636,534. The council members acknowledge that this amount is an estimate and that the Department of Human Services will provide a specific amount to a formal review and a commitment by the board. We have till next week to get this signed, to get it in. This is to allow us to participate, and it's also allowed the state and the federal government to understand how many of the counties with homes will be participating, and that will, at that point, understand what our final number will be. Last year, it was in the neighborhood of 2.4 million. This year, it'll probably be around that. Can't confirm that at this point, but this is needed to participate that, and it was very beneficial to us last year, and hopefully we can participate in this again this year.
Any questions or comments? I'll just say I want to thank you for all the effort you've put in. It's a very complicated formula for what we have to put up, what comes from the other levels of government. My only concern or issue was that we kind of knew this was coming, and this was something that could have been budgeted for in the budget for this year, and I'm disappointed that it was not included as revenue in this year's budget, because every indication we had from CCAP was, in fact, that this was going to happen. And we do often budget for intergovernmental revenues, and this could have been included, and I think that it probably should have been, but that's for another time.
Can I say something,
yeah.
John? I think in 2006, after many, many, many years, the state and the federal government said, we're going to have the IGT forever. That's the day before they told us that we'll never have IGT again. So it's tricky. What I would like to work with the Finance Committee and present that we put together a reserve where we keep this, where we have money in balance in case we need it, but that we don't have to budget for it year in and year out. In other words, we just budget for it once. I'll run that through the Finance Committee, but I think there's a way of skinning this cat where we don't expose ourselves, but at the same time, year after year after year, we're not over budgeting. It'd be a risk mitigation plan.
Yeah, I understand that, but when we were at the CCAP meeting in November, they gave us a strong indication that this was highly likely. I understand what Lehigh County had to do because they had to present and pass their budget a month and a half before we do. But I think we had more to go on than they did. So I understand what they did, but I think we had a much stronger evidence that this program was going to continue into this year.
I think we agree that we'll do something different next year.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? And I'm glad it's a shame it took them 10 years to bring the program back because it was sorely needed and it cost a lot of counties a lot of grief.
If I could say one thing, I want to thank Mr. Warner. He's been my partner and been at all the meetings and understanding and pushing it also, so thank you.
All right, can we call for the vote?
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. D?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro? Peg?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Mr. Kraft?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8 to 0.
Passes by a vote of 8 to 0. So that was all we had on the agenda under new business. Is there any other new business that any members of council would like to raise at this time? Okay, there being none. Next is committee reports. I did reach out to everyone. I think most of you indicated you were fine with the committees. I think there were a couple of minor requests that we'll look to see if we can do something about. But for the most part, the vast majority of you told me that you were fine with the committees as they've been last year. So we'll keep that structure in place. With that being said, is there any committee reports or any? Okay. There being none, next liaison. Any liaison reports? Again, these I'll keep the same. Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, I went to Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and I was very disappointed to find out that after there was great pains from this county, from the county executive, from me representing the county council, Lehigh County, Congressman Dent, Congressman Cartwright, Governor Wolf, every political elected official, Democrat or Republican, wrote letters in protest of the federal government putting up the mega region. That's the mega planning region. And right before the New Year's, there was a press release that in fact is going to be put in place. We're going to have a mega region effective January 19th, one day right before the inauguration. Another thing I think we could help right now is that the new administration will look at that in regards to is this over-regulation and is it better served? I have a press release in front of me that Congressman Dent expressed, and it is very to the point. You know, we're really taking this planning and putting it in a mega region, and we're further removing it from the local control and local voters, and I'm fairly upset about it.
Mr. Vaughn.
So, just to clarify, so you're saying that this move is going to dissolve the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission?
Well, no. It's going to supersede the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. And I also told the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, if all the money is being sucked up by the federal government to do the regional planning at a regional level, myself, not speaking for county council, but I would really look at what our continued funding would be of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. In other words, if we go forth and we're paying for this funding, this through our federal taxes for a super regional, which will definitely overshadow the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. I'd be reluctant to continue funding the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission at the rate that we are because of the dual taxation. I have to tell you, it's this my same. Well, let me just take my foot out of my mouth and not say that. But I'm upset about it.
Mr. Dietz.
And I guess it's not necessarily a liaison, but I did get a call from a constituent about dog licenses going through, and I did speak to Mr. Hunter about it. But so they had some issues. Of course, are a little older, going through the website and having access to it. Of course, they regret the change of it not being at some of the local places to get it done. And then I also spoke at the or called and spoke to one of the places that used to sell the dog licenses, and they missed not having that opportunity. Obviously, someone came in for a 50-cent dog license, and they got some extra revenue and people coming in for it. And so I'd like to see, I realize you're not going to make everyone happy all the time, but I just want to make sure that maybe there's some way to accommodate both of them. And we spent a lot of money on economic development helping these small businesses, and we did something that took business away from them. So.
And I will just tell you that we passed a $300 million budget last month, and the biggest concern I heard about over the last few weeks was dog licenses. I mean, it really gives you some perspective about what people's priorities are. Any other liaison? Nope. Clerk report? None. Solicitor, Mr. Lauer?
Nothing.
Nothing. Any other business to come before council this evening? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Kraft, seconded by Mr. Dietz. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Okay, Peg, good night.
That's true. That's what I've heard,